good morning. We are going to get started today with a short little lecture about how the Supreme Court got its power. When we look at the Constitution, the court can be found in Article 3, and there actually are no specific qualifications for office. So like how the president has a certain age requirement and citizenship, the Supreme Court does not. The Supreme Court is the only court that's actually established in the Constitution. All the other courts that have been set up have been created by Congress. There is no set number of judges actually mentioned. It has been as large as 9 and as low as 5 at times. Presidents such as Franklin Roosevelt have been accused of packing the court. And what that means is that the court several times shot down legislation that he had created. And he was trying to put new justices, adding them to the court so that they would have his political beliefs and then would approve his legislation. He was not able to do that. So when it comes to checks and balances, the executive branch is going to be the one that appoints the judges. So the president will say, this is my new Supreme Court judge. And the Senate, though, has to approve them. And this can be a pretty grueling questioning time period. So really recently in my lifetime, I should say, Clarence Thomas was the first judge to really get nailed. Before him, there was a guy named James Bork who was questioned quite harshly by the Senate, and he was not approved. But Clarence Thomas was, and Clarence Thomas was the first judge who faced accusations of sexual harassment by a woman by the name of Anita Hill. Now, at the time, she was really vilified for this, and many people didn't believe her, but actually it changed workplace environments across the country. So all those sexual harassment rules that works have is because of this case. So the idea that you can't make sexual jokes or sexual references or tell someone that, if you want to keep your job or get a promotion, that you have to have a sexual relationship with me, that all stemmed from this case. There's a great movie that's on HBO that's called Confirmation that I highly recommend that is about the case. So that's Clarence Thomas. He's actually known as one of the more quiet judges on the Supreme Court. He does not write very many briefs. But when he does, people really listen to him. The other more recent one that you might remember is Brett Kavanaugh. Brett was accused of sexual abuse and sexual inappropriate behavior. He was approved, though, along party lines. And what that means is that the Republicans at the time controlled the Senate, and they had enough votes to vote him in. So he is our most recent judge to be added. Now, the court case that really gave the Supreme Court power is Marbury versus Madison. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to give you some of the detailed background, and I'm going to give you it verbally, but I'm also writing it out. So if you need to go back and reference this, you can do so. So the facts are starting in 1800. Thomas Jefferson just won the election, and before Jefferson takes control, the former president, who is at the time John Adams, during his lame duck time, which is the time from when somebody loses the election in November until the new guy takes over in now January, John Adams appoints 42 of his friends to judge positions in Washington, D.C. Now, the judges needed to have assigned commission to take their jobs. John Adams' Secretary of State is John Marshall, and he basically just didn't get them all done and didn't get them delivered. Well, when William Marbury doesn't get his commission, he feels cheated out of his job. And so he demands that the Supreme Court make the new Secretary of State, James Madison, who is working under Jefferson, to deliver his, which is a writ of mandamus. Now, the Constitution does not state whether or not the Supreme Court can even rule in a case like this. But the Judiciary Act of 1789 stated that the Supreme Court would hear cases directly from people. Therefore, Marbury used Madison in this case to sue. So the Chief Justice at the time was John Marshall, the very same John Marshall who didn't deliver the commission on purpose because he hated Jefferson. So this really comes into a political poll where we have, the losing president and his Secretary of State are basically being accused of, not getting their job done. And when the new president, Jefferson, and his Secretary of State, Madison, come in, they just say, well, too bad you didn't get it done, then I don't want those guys. And of course, they don't want to have Marbury on the court because they think Marbury will rule against them. So here's the decision, and it's a complicated one. The court is faced with the fact that if they order Madison to deliver the commission, Jefferson and Madison could just ignore the court. And of course, then the court appears weak. The court isn't really checking the executive branch. If the court denies the claim, then it would appear to be very biased, and it would be backing down from the president. And of course, John Marshall doesn't want to appear to be weak to Thomas Jefferson, whom he hates. So what are they going to do? Well, when they do vote, it's pretty surprising because first off, it is a unanimous vote. Everybody agrees. Marbury has the right to the commission, and Madison is in violation of Marbury's rights. Sorry about the little typo there. So here's the key to the decision, the Judiciary Act. What the court decides is that the Judiciary Act that was created in 1789 is actually in conflict with the Constitution, and therefore it is unconstitutional. And that is really the key. And so the impact is this creates something that's called judicial review. This allows the court to check the laws that are created by the Congress and president. Therefore, it gives the Supreme Court power. So if the Congress makes a law that says, we want to be able to round up all of the, Japanese Americans and that's legal, the Supreme Court can say, no, you cannot do that. That is an illegal act. And so this gives the Supreme Court its power. All right, so that's Marbury versus Madison.